It's funny how you end up where you are, and it's quite strange for me because with my mother passing away, I've realised what a big influence she was on me, and it's made a huge impact on the decisions I've made, particularly here in the orchard. And she was always very keen on the countryside, and it had a massive impact on her as well, growing up in Scotland, seeing how the fruit was grown and the vegetables were grown. And it's something that I've taken on board and I'm using here. So one of the problems that you have in this orchard, which is very similar to Scotland, is the high altitude, roughly 600 feet, 200 metres above sea level. And that brings with it quite an extreme climate, very similar to some of the orchards in Scotland, and a lot of the old orchards were below 600 in Scotland. This is a pear called Crawford, which was always very popular in those orchards, and we planted it here in quite an exposed position, but already it's put on some good growth. It's only a year old, and it's exactly the kind of information that you gain when you start to research an area and finding new varieties that you can use from there. Here's a row of apples at the edge of our orchard, which gets extremely hot and sunny. There's a long day length here, but is also exposed to the cold and the wind. And it's an example of the sort of environment that you might find in some of the orchards in Scotland, in places like the Castle of Gowrie or the Clydeside orchards, or even further north. And for example, here we've got Camber's Neathen pippin, which is an excellent old Victorian apple, which was always very popular. And it's exactly the kind of thing that we really like to put in here. We've got Cool Blush, which is one of the most northerly apples in the UK, and it's doing really well here. We've also got Golden Spire, which is another very popular apple, always grown in Scotland, and Oslin, or Arbroath pippin, Scotch Bridget, and Scotch Dumpling, and Stirling Castle, and of course Tower of Glamis, all of which were really popular in Scotland and are still really good apples. And in fact, Stirling Castle was grown commercially in England for a long time until spraying became much more popular. So you can see the advantage of using apples from an area of the UK which is similar to where you are. And in this particular case, it's Scotland, which means a lot to me. So the choices that I've made to plant in this orchard, and the trees that are growing here, and the look and the fact that it's organic and regenerative, is very influenced by my mother, and it's really a lasting legacy of her influence on me, which is timeless. Thank you, Mum.